The Travel Transformation Podcast is proud to be partnered with Give the Goodness Global, an amazing global outreach project helping families in need all over Southeast Asia and beyond. Please check them out at Instagram.com/Give the Goodness Global today. And now on to the podcast episode.
Welcome to the Travel Transformation Podcast, where we talk all things travel and all things transformation, exploring the life-changing potential of solo travel, intentional travel, and location-independent working. Whether you're an aspiring digital nomad or simply wish to boost your confidence through epic travel experiences, I'm here to motivate and inspire you to go after all your wildest dreams. I'm Jessica Grace Coleman, author, certified travel coach, founder of the Travel Transformation Company, and your host for the Travel Transformation Podcast. Travel changed my life. Now let's change yours. You ready? Let's go. Welcome to the Travel Transformation Podcast, where we talk all things travel and all things transformation. My name is Jessica Grace Coleman, and I'm your host. And today I'm talking to Darren Jonathon, founder of the Average Joe Down Under blog and host of the Average Joe Down Under podcast. Now, we're going to get to the interview in a moment, but I just wanted to do a bit of a life update, well, more of a podcast update really, because going forward, I will still be doing 2 episodes a week. I will be doing a lot more interviews than solo episodes because, well, basically there's this Facebook group where you can post on to get guests for your podcast, which I've been meaning to do for a while, but I'd already had so many great people contacting me wanting to come on that I didn't need to. And I thought, I'll just do a post, see if I can get a few people. And over 100 people asked to come on as guests. And they're all really interesting people with really interesting stories about travel. So I have literally spent last week booking people in. It's taking forever, but I'm so excited to interview all these people. I'm now actually booking into February next year, 2024. So I've got a lot of interviews coming up. I have put aside some solo episodes because there are some subjects I want to talk about at particular times. And if there's anything I need to talk about urgently, I'm going to do them either at the start of the podcast like I'm doing now, or I will do a sort of bonus episode, so like a third one that week. But yeah, just wanted to let you know that. And also out of those, I think it was about 105, 106 people, Darren, my guest today, was the first one to book in. So the early bird gets the worm. He's not having to wait until February. So yeah, really appreciate him getting in touch and booking it in. Also, I just want to point out that I have new podcast pages on my website. So if you go to traveltransformationcoach.com/podcast, that's the main podcast page. But from now on, if you want the transcripts for each episode, if you want the show notes in an easy to get place, and if you want the links to all the main podcast platforms on the particular episode you're listening to, all you need to do is go to traveltransformationcoach.com/ and then put the number in actual numbers of the episode you want to listen to. So say you want to listen to the one that came out before this, 78, you can go to traveltransformationcoach.com/78 and you will get the whole page with the transcript, the show notes, the links, everything. And it's taken me a while to get this going, but I'm really glad that the pages are now up and available, and I'll be adding to them, obviously, as I create new podcast episodes. So I just wanted to get that out there as well. Okay, so today's interview is with Darren. Darren moved from Northern Ireland to Sydney, Australia over a decade ago, and now he's helping other expats and travellers who want to move to his new adopted home through his blog, podcast, and online content. In this episode, we talk about the highs and lows of moving to another country, top tips for moving to Australia and travelling around Australia, and his ridiculously cute groodle dog, Kevin, who I was introduced to over Zoom after this podcast recording ended. So this interview was worth it for that moment alone. But we also got pretty deep and personal, talking about the truth about travel, being an expat, feeling homesick, rediscovering who you are, and getting the help you need. It was such a good conversation that I think will help a lot of people. So let's get to the interview. Hi, Darren. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me all the way from Australia. So how are you today, or should I say this evening, where you are?
Yeah, I know. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to be here today. And well, tonight, should I say. Yes, we're in the future over here in Australia. So,
Nice. Okay, so for my listeners, could you just give me a bit of background information about you, where you're from originally, where you are now, and what you do for a living?
sure. So, originally from Northern Ireland and been here in Australia for about 13 years or so. And officially a special education teacher here actually in Sydney right now. And I've been loving life here. And yeah, we're just ready to launch in and talk a bit more about how I got here and what made me make the move, I think. Yeah, pretty
Yeah, so
much.
that was my next question because Northern Ireland to
Oh.
Australia seems like quite a big jump, mainly in terms of like the lifestyle, I would say. So, what initially made you want to go to Australia? What drew you over there, and what made you want to actually live there?
Yeah, well, I think coming from Northern Ireland itself is very sheltered part of the UK. It's not really the same as in England or Scotland, really, because of all the things that had happened in the past. We were sort of sheltered from the outside world a bit. People didn't want to come and visit and necessarily or live there. So it was very one culture, and they only had like one view. And I'm just lucky, I guess. So I grew up in a family who really loved to travel. I think I just got the traveling bug, and I think on one of our trips to Australia when I was about 15, I sort of like, I remember vividly in my head, like seeing the university and thinking, oh, I could go to uni there. It was just because of the sun. And it was just, it was like one of those magical experiences that you just see. I think you even talk about it on your
I
podcast,
do.
those magical moments.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
yeah, it was just like one of those magical moments. And I actually really didn't think it would ever happen. And yeah, and it just kind of, it did, you know?
That's amazing. So, how did you make that happen initially?
It was a bit of a whirlwind. So when I obviously went to university back home, realized that potentially like that career was not for me. And I studied business and realized that that was shortly like I needed to travel, I needed to get away, I needed to do something different with my life. And I really thought this is the end of the road for me. And I don't know, I think I was feeling very stuck. I felt like I needed a huge change. Like everybody was like, go to England, go to Scotland, go somewhere different, like go to Europe, move to Dublin. And I was sort of like, but that's so close, like if I want to do a change, I need to do something radical. And I got to that point, I think, where I was at that really at that rock bottom. Just thought that I'd probably live there all my life and like no new experiences would come my way and I'd be stuck at a very low wage for the rest of my life because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I decided to take a chance on taking the working holiday visa to Australia in 2012. Or no, sorry, 2010, should I say, because it was earlier than that. But I did come back in 2012, which was probably another part of the story. But yeah, and that changed everything for me from then on.
Wow, I love that because I think so many people can relate to feeling stuck in a certain place, but also in a certain situation, like with low wage jobs, or not, thinking that there is more, but I don't know how to get it, or I want more out of life, but I don't have the courage to go after it. And so many people would love to move halfway across the world or, do a big change like you were talking about, but they just either never get around to it or the fear holds them back. And that is so relatable for like me in my life as well. I put off traveling full time for years and years and years because it was just such this huge, overwhelming, daunting thing. So the fact that you actually went and did it is awesome. So what was
Yeah,
your
well, actually, the funny thing, actually, just for mention, was actually that this was totally like people think, oh yeah, because you were in a traveling family. We used to travel a lot as a family. I could never have seen myself living away, like up until I was 19. I could not have seen myself living away. I always thought that I'd be there. The panic and the fear of leaving my home and my family was really strong. Like that was like, and I will probably talk about it more in this podcast about how it affected me over the years when I've been away. But that panic and fear was totally like, even friends of mine would say, oh, you like to travel, but you would never move away. And I was like, yeah, I would never go. Like, it was something that was totally different to me. So yeah, so it was out of character, should I say?
wow, okay, nice. Yeah, but
Mm,
that's also very relatable for people. I think they get to a certain point where it's just something snaps, or like you say, you get to rock bottom and you need to change, even if it is scary.
yeah, yeah,
So
for sure.
you went for a working holiday visa. So how was that experience and what kind of work did you do?
Well, that was actually quite funny because when I got here, It was in 2010, was just after the financial crisis that hit everywhere. I was actually meant to move to England at the time. Even though I wanted to come to Australia completely, I did apply to a course in the UK, but unfortunately it got cut. So, when I was in Australia, I like I just thought this was going to be an amazing opportunity. And because of the financial crisis, there was no jobs. It was so hard to get a job, like even just as a holiday maker, basically. And any job that I could get was you work for free and then they pay you to travel. And I was like, well, that's great, but how do I afford to live? So I ended up, luckily, I kind of made some close friends about month 4 when I had just run out of money. And they sort of got me into actually being a lifeguard. So I was working as a lifeguard at a leisure center, which was it was great actually, but it was also really random,
I love that. Yeah. So
super random.
had you ever done anything like that before?
I had swam semi-professionally at one point when I was like 16, but after that I was like, that's me done. But then jumping in and saving kids was like something totally different. But it
Wow.
was good while, it was good experience.
Yeah. I mean, you were like getting all the new experiences at once, like going to Australia, being a lifeguard.
Yeah.
So during your time on the working holiday visa, what were the main differences you found between living in Northern Ireland and living in Australia? Obviously, there's like obvious ones like the weather and stuff like that, but was there anything that really sort of struck you as like, this is so different to what I'm used to?
Yeah, well, so the first month I was there, I was in culture shock because I had come from Northern Ireland, a very white, like 99% white country, and moved to Australia, and there was a melting pot of all these different cultures and food. And like I had been brought up like meat veg, the traditional UK dinners, and then suddenly thrown into like going out for Thai and like sometimes like all these sushi and stuff like was just foreign. And it was really like a culture shock. It was just couldn't believe how many international people were here. And I kind of had it in my head like it was a beachy town and we were going to like live by the water. And that was totally not the case. But definitely after the culture shock, there was, you got the weather, the lifestyle is a bit more different. People's attitudes to work is very different. People in UK like their 9 to 5. Here they like, as long as you're working hard during the day, you can play at the weekend. Like there's kind of a bit more relaxed attitude to, if we want to go for a surf, we'll go for a surf and then we come back to work. Or people try to make the job fit for them, which a lot of people like.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Just like popping out for a surf. You can't really do that in
Yeah.
many places in the UK. Okay.
Yeah.
So you went there for your working holiday visa and then you went back and moved there properly. Was it a couple of years later? How did that come about?
Yeah, so I went for my working holiday visa, and so I said went. So I got a course offered to me again at home for teaching because I think, do you know what, I had that epiphany moment about month 7 and was like, what am I doing with my life? I'm wasting my opportunity here. Like I need to go home and figure out what my life is about. And I guess travel was always like I would always go away with family or whatever and do all my thinking. Like I'd go away and relax and mull through my thoughts because I have a lot of thoughts in my head. And I told you before this, I was like, keep me on track because the thoughts that come into my head, I have to sort like logically and like think like to make a decision. I think that really hit me because I hadn't been thinking about that for like 7 months. And I kind of just was in this like fantasy world of being overseas. And then I was like, it was like an epiphany moment. I need to like do something with my life, or I'm just going to like just let it drift away, you know? And so I came home and then a few things happened in my personal life and I decided if I'm going to make the move, I want to go back to Australia. So I'm going to study. And so then I was able to come back in 2012, a year and a half later, and study what I really wanted to do. I think I already knew it years ago, but it didn't come out till after I did my degree to do teaching. So I studied here for 2 years.
Nice. And was it a difficult process applying for a university in Australia or?
Yeah, it was like totally different. Like, it was actually easier, I think, because you're foreign and they have a really open policy to international people. And I think that's why, when I came here, the melting pot of cultures is so refreshing. It's so different, but it was overwhelming. But when I came back the second time, I was so used to that. And like everybody's international student mostly. Like there's lots of students. and it was just a thing. So it was actually a lot smoother than I thought, but it was very expensive. So it is a more expensive option. There are other visas out there, by the way, everybody.
Yeah, I actually have a friend who's going to university in Australia at the moment and sort of doing
Oh,
the
cool.
whole thing around teaching as well. So that's a cool little link.
Awesome. Yeah.
So people think often that moving overseas, especially to somewhere like Australia, you think of the sun, the sea, the surf, and being like an expat is this exciting, glamorous thing. And I'm sure parts of it are. But can you talk a little bit about the other side of it, the parts you found particularly difficult and how you've dealt with them or overcome them over the years?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. I kind of alluded to that whenever I said about my family and I wouldn't leave. It was very out of character. So when I came back in 2012 to end of 2013, so just about to turn into 2014, everything was great. I was probably loving life. And I'm the kind of person who has a lot of thoughts, as I say before. And after 2014, that's when things started to become a bit real that I actually lived here. And when I got the PR and, permanent residency, and I kind of made it a bit more official. That started probably a cycle of about 5 years after that of homesickness. Yeah. And just, I would say, a bit more across like anxiety, mild depression, kind of started like a cycle. And I'm pretty open with this on my own podcast as well, because like a lot of people experience it, but not very many people talk about it. It's become more popular, I guess, in to speak about in like over the years, like probably in 2023 because of COVID and how they experience being at home. But yeah, those were really tough years. It would probably happen every couple of months where I'd feel like super overwhelmed with everything, like being away from family, having no one here. And you really notice that the culture of friends here is very different. Like I could call up someone at home and be like, "Do you want to go out tonight?" But it wasn't the same here. No matter how hard I tried to gain friends, you always seem to lose a few others. It really didn't catch up. And so those were probably the 5 hardest years that really took its toll at some points where I thought, this is it. I'm out of here. I'm gone. But I managed to stick in.
So did you come up with any coping mechanisms, or was it literally just giving yourself time to sort of overcome them?
Yeah, well, actually, a lot of people are asking the same thing with through what I do as well. And they're, how did you do that? And I thought I said, sometimes I really don't know how I got through. Like, you'd be crying for 45 minutes straight. And I'm an emotional person, like a sensitive guy, but I'm not cry every like 2 minutes. And it was constant. Like 1 minute, it was like waves of homesickness would come across you and you'd cry for 45 minutes and then you'd be fine for the next 45 minutes. And, it just was a cycle over the years. Obviously, I've done certain things like, I would work more so that my emotions wouldn't come out as much because I would keep myself busy. But obviously, that's very not healthy. So, probably just before COVID, maybe around when I was about 28, I sort of approached a therapist. And that's when the breakthroughs in the homesickness and my whole demeanor really changed, I think, after that. So, going to therapy really changed everything.
Mm, yeah, that's great. And
Yeah.
had you ever done anything like that before? Was it a sort of daunting thing to do, or?
Yeah. Oh, it was like I was scared because I was like thinking like, are they gonna like tell me that I'm crazy? Like, am I experiencing some out of body experience? Because I actually felt like sometimes I would dream like as if they were reality because I was so tired and exhausted and emotionally exhausted that I would see things in my dreams and think they were actually real. Like I believed that something happened last night, it would happen at work. Like it wasn't normal. And when I realized that I was experiencing really strong emotions from homesickness and, as they say, sometimes loneliness and depression, like a bit of that. But then obviously they teach you how to manage your stress, your triggers. And now it's got to the point where like I know if I'm having a bad week, I will be able to point out a certain trigger and be like, okay, I need to squash that before it gets bigger. Even across the year, I will do things like, oh, I need to do this, this, and this to make myself feel better this month. And I usually can catch it before it starts rolling into that snowball effect.
That's great. So it's like having the
Yeah.
awareness to know what's going on and then having the tools
Yeah.
to deal with it, and you wouldn't have necessarily known any of that without therapy, so that's really great. During
Yeah, which you didn't expect when you came over.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to learn that about myself at all. Like I never
Mm.
really thought that because I was always that like up until I left Australia, I was super happy. I never had any health problems. I was like people would always say like, why are you always so happy? Like, you're like working 24/7. I'm like, yeah, like I'd do a little dance, sing a song, I'd be super happy and outgoing. And then my personality changed as those things were happening, which obviously was a sign.
Mm. And during any of that time, did you ever think about moving back to the UK?
Yeah. So multiple times, multiple times. I remember one specifically, I had even sent 5 suitcases home and was like, that's it, I'm done. And my mom was even saying, just come home. Like, you can't, because I was kept on calling her. And obviously, family hearing you cry for like 45 minutes on the phone when you don't cry often, like, that was obviously a big red flag. And I was like, literally, and I think what really saved me in that moments were like those close friends that were really like, "Oh, you're okay, like, you can do this." And I think then starting to seek out help was really important at that point.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to learn all about the 5 travel transformation principles, including how to conquer your fears through travel? Then you need to grab a copy of my Travel Transformation Guide, written by me, Jessica Grace Coleman, as part of my Flip the Script Academy. It's totally free. All I ask for in exchange is your email address so I can keep you updated on all things travel and transformation. Just head to traveltransformationcoach.com/free guide to get your guide today. And now, let's get back to the Travel Transformation podcast. So you're obviously very passionate about this subject because you sort of teach people about it now through your blog, Average Joe Down Under, and
Yeah.
your podcast. So can you tell me about these 2 things, Average Joe Down Under? I'll put the links in the show notes as well. What made you want to start it? What can people expect from it? And also, how have you found the experience of starting and running a podcast? Because obviously I can relate to that.
Yep. Oh, thank you so much, by the way, for even putting the link there, because it's a resource for people. I think I just, when I came here, I had nothing. I had no resources, nothing to Google. And people still say that to me today. Like, I have nowhere to go to actually see blogs or like to read information because it's all in different locations. And well, first of all, I suppose it was born out of that reasoning, as I never really had a resource. And I also felt really super average when I was, at school. I always that person getting B's and C's and was never like, the smartest of the group. And I always felt super like average at uni. And I really felt like I'd have a super average life. And I think that was what got me down and got to me the most. And so I thought, like, over the years, as I've kind of grown personally and in myself and grown into myself, I've realized that I was not average at all, really. Like, and this blog sort of started out like Average Joe because I felt so average, and it kind of Average Joe rhymes. And also I'm down under. But I really wanted to create a resource that really like caters to everybody, that no matter where you are in the journey, whether you're thinking about moving, whether you're already moving, or whether you're already here, like a spectrum. And then again, the podcast is the same. The podcast is really there to be an added resource for people to listen to if they're feeling a certain way or want to get some more information, because not everybody likes to read stuff on the internet. That kind of started it. But the podcasting, I find it very strange because it's something that I never thought because as I said, I felt very average. And over the years, even though I've grown into myself, I really had that like body confidence issues of like putting myself out there on social media or on TikTok or podcast or anything, even people hearing me, I'd be like, oh, not for me. But then as I started and I was like, I'll just give it a go. And when those first couple of numbers come in and people say to you, oh, I really loved that episode, it really helped me. That's when I was like, oh, this is what people need. So I'm going to do it and just go for it. I'm sure the same, like people are telling you all the time, like how amazing they're hearing all the stuff that you're giving, those tips and tricks, and how, hearing how travel transformed their lives, and then thinking I could do the same, especially people who hear your story. Even I have started listening to your podcast a lot, and I thinking, wow, yeah, you've caught that. Like, that's what it is, like those magic moments, or like hearing that someone giving, when you're interviewing people, like it just makes you light up inside and it makes you feel so rewarded. You're not making anything monetary out of it, but people are really engaged and it's helping them. That's what the main goal of both of those resources are, really.
Yeah, I love it, and thank you. And I'm totally relating with everything you just said about, not wanting to put yourself out there on social media, online, even when it's just a podcast and it's your voice, like you say, it's still a very weird thing to do. Like, like
Totally.
kids these
Yeah.
days are growing up with TikTok and podcasts and stuff, and it's like totally normal. But for
Yeah.
people like at our age, it does seem a bit of a strange thing to do to
Yeah. I'm like,
sit down in a room
yeah, I'm
on
like,
your
I just can't get
own.
used to TikTok.
I'm trying, but yeah, it's
No. Yeah.
so many social media things to do. But yeah,
There's
and
so
you're
many.
so right. Well, like even if it just takes, one person listening to one podcast, and even if you're not giving, any specific tips or tricks, just hearing someone's story like yours of how you went from Northern Ireland to Australia, and now you have this completely different life and this completely different outlook on the world and yourself. It's amazing because someone might be listening to this from Northern Ireland, someone younger who's feeling stuck and feeling like they don't know what they can do and feeling like there's nothing more to life than their situation now. And just
Yeah.
hearing that someone else has done it, someone that sounds exactly like them, is such an empowering and
Yeah.
motivational, inspiring thing. So
Thank you.
yeah, it was really, really cool. So thank you for coming on and telling about your story. So I think we may have already touched on this, but you have noted that travel, and especially this journey to Australia, literally saved your life. So what did you mean by this statement? Is it sort of similar stuff to what we've been talking
Yeah.
about? Or?
Well, I think when I did talk about the dark times and the things, I think those were really points where I actually really hated myself. And I didn't realize how actually I hated myself from a young age. And all those things that I grew up with thinking that people thought of me wasn't really until I had that therapy to realize, like, like Australia really saved my life. Because if I was at home, I'd never have got the support, the medical support, because when I went here and came here, the support and the infrastructure of the what we call, it's not the NHS here, but it's the free healthcare system here. They just have so many resources compared to home. And there was times where I thought like I am not going to be able to survive another day. And I guess from maybe about 16, I really noticed that that was a trend up until it was about 28. Like things like body issues. I'd look at a photo and see myself as a really like huge person compared to everybody else. But then after I had therapy and worked out all those issues and grew and, like, I'm so sorry, I'm being super honest
Oh no, I
and
love
super
it.
out
I
there
love
because
super honesty.
because I feel like people don't hear this stuff. But basically after I had therapy and everything, and I look back at those pictures and I think, I can't believe that in that photo, I used to think like, wow, I'm so big when I look so skinny. And, like things like that. And like at those times I was like, I shouldn't be alive. Like, why am I here? What is my purpose? Those types of things. And I think when you live with those types of things for so long, they eat away at you no matter what country you're in. And if you don't get support and you don't you really need to and I didn't realize how much I needed to until this whole thing happened. And I think the homesickness was a branch of that. And I really credit Australia to save my life, because when I literally went to the healthcare system and was like, hey, this is going on, like, doctor, please help. Like, I've never seen so much support. And, like things like, blood tests were like, you just say you want a blood test and they'd give you one, and things like that. I guess like it literally like not only travel saved my life, but literally Australia. So yeah, there's, as like once you do the medical stuff and you find out exactly what's going on, you're like, wow, like it's changed everything.
Mm.
So yeah, that was basically the gist of what I was trying to say. I just, I don't want to go into too much, but you can, I think people can guess.
Yeah. Well, thank you for talking about
Yeah.
this. And also the body image stuff you were saying about. Thank you for being honest about that, because you're right, we don't hear about it enough, but we like specifically don't hear about it enough from men. So I really like that you sort of mentioned that at all, because I'm sure a lot of men listening, they're not used to talking about this kind of stuff or admitting
Mm.
it, or maybe
You
even
didn't think you'd hear that in a
themselves.
travel transformation podcast, did
No,
you?
well, it's all about transformation,
Oh,
and this is all about it.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm so glad you were able to get the help you needed in Australia. And like you say, the homesickness stuff was horrible, but it took you to the point where you got the therapy you needed, and then you found out all these other stuff that you needed to work on, and like that
Yeah.
helped you as well. So it's kind of like it might have been horrible at the time, but it led to all these amazing discoveries about yourself. And I love when you can sort of look back and pinpoint certain
Yeah.
moments like that. That really helped.
I'm so thankful for like looking back at those times and using them as such a positive now. Like I wouldn't be here and thinking the way I think without having gone through those things. And I don't think you get that without traveling, because I was here alone by myself, no family, no friends. At one point, I literally had no one, had literally no one. So you don't find those things about yourself unless you're really searching and you're really finding your purpose in life. Yeah.
Totally
And
agree
that's
with
it
that.
happens. So, you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, like you say, if you're just in one place going about your normal routine, you're sort of it's the same thing every day. You don't even stop to think about these things. There's nothing that pulls you out of your situation to
Mm,
make you think about it. So totally agree with that as well.
yeah, totally.
Um, so if someone's listening to this now, they're maybe from the UK, they live in the UK now, and they've always dreamed of moving to Australia. What tips would you give them? Like, where should they even start? Because it's such a huge,
Oh,
overwhelming seeming thing.
oh, it's totally overwhelming. As I say, Australia is amazing. Over the recent years, it has become a lot more expensive. So I would say, first of all, is plan when you actually want to go. So if you're planning on a holiday, I would 100% recommend that you start saving. That's the first one. Also, if you're actually planning to make the move, or at least do I know that there's a lot of people that come out here and do like retreats and do like things like where they come for a spa retreat. There's actually international people that come here for spas, you believe it or not. Health retreats, artists coming and living in like a workshop where they because there's a lot of famous poets and artists here in Australia as well. So they have like set up. So if you're coming to do those types of things, I would just say save, because they're expensive, they're not cheap. But if you're coming to make the move, like think about getting your visa and actually not lying on your forms, because Australia do not like lying.
Mm.
They don't. If you lie on any type of government form, you're pretty much cancelled for a couple of years. That's the second tip. But also, I think you really just need to decide on, like, if you're going to go and travel, see the highlights, like literally just see the highlights. But I would recommend that you maybe go to like do a lot of research, because there's so much to see here that you don't want to miss what you're actually going to go here for. But if you are making the permanent move, that's a different thing. So I would recommend that you come and see it first, like you do like a reconnaissance trip. You go out and see what it's like, see where you kind of maybe would like to live, because every single city is totally different. Like you can go from one side of the Australia where it's super hot and like deserty, to tropical North Queensland, to cold and wet Hobart and in Tasmania. So it's just so vast and so different. So I definitely say do research. And where you can find that research is a lot of so you can look at my blog if you want.
Yeah.
And you can also, like, I would just say start Googling and finding out where you want to go. Like there's lots of places like Get My Guide, there's lots of Instagrams like Aussies Up Close, and they tour Australia and give you lots of highlights and tips on Instagram and those types of things. So
Yeah,
for
nice.
sure.
And I've been to Australia, but I've only been to Brisbane and Melbourne. And I went to Brisbane because
Oh,
my
okay.
friend Vicky was living there at the time. And I went to Melbourne because me and my friend are huge Neighbours fans, and we wanted to do the tour of Ramsay Street. So
Oh, wow. Yeah, I haven't done
you
that.
you might find that
Was it
funny because
good?
yeah, it was so good. We went and did the
Oh,
tour, and then they have this like, well, they used to have this neighbours night in like St Kilda near the beach,
oh,
where you go to a pub and they have
yeah.
some of the actors and you just get drunk with them and do a Q&A, and it was really
Oh my
good.
God.
But I always find it funny
That
because
was so random. That would not
yeah,
happen at home.
yeah, I know. And I took
That's so cool.
whenever I talk to Australian people about it, they're like, neighbours, really? Like it's not a huge thing over there, but the UK love it for some reason. And yeah, it got
Yeah.
cancelled and it's coming back, and I'm so happy it's coming back. But yeah, that's why I
Oh,
went there. So, weird reasons, but I really enjoyed it. And I believe you've travelled all over Australia as well. And you've sort of managed to do it on a bit of a budget, is that right? So can you tell me how you did this
yeah.
and
Yeah.
where your favourite places have been to visit?
Yeah, for sure. So, obviously I'm a special education teacher here in Australia. And obviously, teachers don't get paid a lot. But in Australia, they get paid sometimes, well, I think because I'm from the UK, very, very well, which was surprising to me to begin with. Obviously, if you have a few years of experience, you actually get paid quite decently, I think. But where the cheap flights are, because I always try to do things on a budget because I'm trying to save and put it towards like, the blog or like to other things, investments and things that I would want to do with my life. But where I've traveled cheap is Australia has something like, I suppose UK have them too, and so does America, but America's more popular with frequent flyer points. And so over the last couple of years, I've really cultivated using frequent flyer points to my advantage. And so I would fly to somewhere, for like $200 or like less than 100 quid across the whole of Australia, which is there and back. But, so you do types of those things to keep your costs down. So then if you do spend like slightly more in a hotel, you're not really worried. Or, if you go to hostel, you can do the trip for like nothing. There's times where I've done a trip up north for like, $60, and I've literally drove there and stayed 2 nights in a hostel. So, and, people think, oh, hostels, it's not like really bad. It's actually really good. They're really good here. And so a lot of people do come over on working holidays and go from hostel to hostel. I know they can do them for, $30-$40 a night. But yeah, so I decided over the years that I would start to travel Australia, because like I never even traveled Northern Ireland or Ireland itself. Like I never really, like, you never travel your home country until someone visits. But I thought, well, I need to make more of effort to travel Australia. So that's when I started like, taking little weekend trips, or, go up to the Hunter Wine area for a weekend, and then I just went to Perth there in October last year. And like saying that, Perth is like, oh, because if you buy the flights outright, they're like $850, which is probably around £450 return. Whereas I was able to pay £100, yeah, just less than £100 for return flights with the frequent flyer points. So
Nice.
then you can extend your trip for an extra couple of days. So you're finding ways to like extend your trip, or to stay in nicer hotels, or like I'm trying to travel more on a budget these days, or at least try to make it worth it. So again, if you are coming here, there you should take advantage of those types of things as well.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I've sort of not really got into the whole points and miles thing yet, but I know it's something I need to
Mm.
look into, because you can end up, saving so much. And like I keep hearing people going on like business class flights for like less
Yeah.
than they would have paid for the economy, and I'm like, oh, that
Mm.
sounds pretty good to me.
It's a
Um,
talent. It really is. It's really super
yeah.
hard. Like I had no idea how much work you have to put in, but it's really worth it. Like my sister, because my parents come out obviously to visit. My sister actually moved here a couple of years ago, so now I have a family member. But my sister and her husband decided to do the whole points thing, and they had so many points that they were able to put my mom and dad in a hotel for 3 months for free.
Three
Like that's
months.
how much, like, yeah, so there's people who can do it, like, and they're not cheap hotels, like they're really nice. So you're using things like that to your advantage. So if you do have people, friends or family coming over, that you can use it, and it really doesn't cost you anything, because it's what you're going to buy anyway. You're just putting it on a credit card. But then, again, people like, debt or bad debt, people are funny about those types of things. So,
Yeah,
but
but I mean, that
if you
sounds
can
worth
do it,
it.
yeah, it
Definitely.
does to me.
Okay, so just before we finish, this isn't even a question. I just wanted to mention your dog because I saw a photo of
No.
him on Instagram, and he's
Oh
a
my goodness, yes.
groodle. Is that right? A groodle.
He is a groodle, yes. Yes, he's
What is
super
that?
cute.
A
He's actually
poodle?
in the room.
Oh, is he?
He's
Oh.
a golden retriever poodle.
And he's called
Yeah,
Kevin. Is that right?
he is called Kevin, yes.
I love that.
Just after my favorite movie,
Which favorite movie?
90s Home Alone.
Oh, nice. I love human
Mm,
names for dogs, like especially male human names for dogs.
yeah.
That's great, and he's so cute.
Yeah.
So I this isn't a question. I just want to encourage everyone to go look at your Instagram to see the photos
Oh,
of
thanks.
Kevin. It's amazing. Okay, so two
He's
last
so cute. He's so
questions.
big.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the last
Yep.
picture when you're sort of holding him, and it's like, how are you even holding that dog?
Yeah.
So
He's
huge.
like,
So
yeah.
cute. Okay, so two last quick questions. I'll put these in the show notes, but first of all, where can people find and follow you online? And is there anything else you want to talk about, or any other message you want to get across before we go?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you can find me on Average Joe Down Under on Instagram. And you can also, if you Google Average Joe Down Under on Google, you will find me there, because there's lots of podcasts, there's lots of links there. But if you want to follow the blog, it's actually darrenjonathon.com. So, and Jonathan was spelt with an O at the end. And I guess just I really thank you for having me on. And I've been a bit personal, but I guess, like, travel really is something I'm super passionate about. Like I have to travel. It's a need, and it just really refreshes my soul. Like it just I know that if I go see somewhere new, the sights and the sounds and everything just really like, it just changes me. And I just encourage you, even if you haven't, you're scared to put yourself out there, you don't know if you want to live, because I know people are struggling with the financial crisis right now and people are under the pump. I encourage you, this is probably the best time to do those types of things, to break free from those pressures and let yourself live and do something that you've never done before. Because I felt exactly the same way. Maybe not obviously in terms of money or anything, but I felt that personally. I felt very restricted. And I feel like, if this is your time, is just, if you're thinking about it, just do it. And if Australia is on your radar, why not come and say hello? But if you're somewhere else out there in the world you've wanted to see for so long, or you've wanted to take that cruise or trip or go to that, like Bora Bora is on my list, if you want to go, just make it happen. Like, find a way, do a plan and make it work. This is your sign. So
Yeah.
thank you.
I love that so much. I love everything you just said. I love the let yourself
Yeah.
live. Just do it. Make it
Let yourself
happen.
live.
Yeah, I mean, that's all we
Yeah.
need to say to end the podcast with. That was so great. Thank you so much for coming on today, Darren, and being really open and
Thank you
honest.
so
I
much
really
for having me.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Travel Transformation Podcast with me, Jessica Grace Coleman. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could please subscribe, rate and review, and spread the word, because it's my mission to help as many people as possible to flip the script on their lives and transform through travel. And remember, life is short, so let's make sure it's nothing short of amazing. Until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side.